Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Character Creation Cast. We are so excited you're here. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Bolter.
And I'm your other host, Amelia Antrim. If you want to know a little bit more about Ryan and I, or about what to expect as a listener of this show, you can check out episode 0, which should also be in your feed. Otherwise, just hang out and figure it out as you go.
Exactly. This episode here has been remastered 4.5 years after its original recording to much better match our more exacting quality standards of today here in 2022. Despite the remastering, it was still our first time recording a full podcast together with guests. So yeah.
We had done a few practice sessions on our own, and as we mentioned in our episode 0, Ryan and I did not know each other before we endeavored on this perilous journey. But you can hear some of our awkwardness probably. Despite Ryan's wonderful editing, he cannot edit in more charisma and chemistry.
No, I checked with Isotope and they said they're going to work on it. So. Oh,
okay. Coming soon. We do promise that our chemistry and energy only get better from here. Hopefully you can even hear it in this open, but please bear with us.
Absolutely. Even if you find that D&D isn't your thing, absolutely take a look at our feed to see if there is something that sparks your interest. We have covered a ton of games, new and old, with so many fantastic guests. So we think there is something in there for pretty much everybody.
If it turns out that D&D is your thing, you can also check out our 50th series where we cover D&D again in a very different way with some different guests with more chemistry.
Absolutely.
But with all of that out of the way, please enjoy the show, everyone. Welcome to Character Creation Cast, a show where we discuss and create characters, the best part of role-playing games, with guests using their favorite systems. I'm one of your hosts, Amelia, and this episode, my co-host Ryan and I welcome Neal Powell, most notably from Dungeon Master's Block podcast. He is also the editor for Whelmed, the Young Justice Files, and the brand new Tentacles and Tomes podcast, a Call of Cthulhu actual play podcast. We also have with us Tallsquall, who plays Alistair on Turncloak's actual play podcast. And along with this, he is the DM for The Vice, a 100% for charity actual play campaign on Twitch. And we are here to discuss character creation for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, a fantasy role-playing game system published by Wizards of the Coast.
And welcome to the first episode, everyone. We're very excited to have you all here with us.
Well, thank you. Looking forward to create some characters and show off some of the fun things that 5th edition has to offer.
I really thought this was going to be 2nd edition. No, I'm just kidding. I'm ready to calculate some THAC-O. No, wait, what?
Oh, yeah, start back over. In my day, man.
Well, Neal, could you go ahead and tell us a bit more about yourself and anything else you want to talk about the projects that you're currently involved in?
No, that was a good rundown. That also means that Tallsquall, you and I are Encounter Roleplay friends, and we are officially meeting for the first time because I edit Tomes and Tentacles.
Yeah, welcome to the fold of Will's madness, or actually, I guess you get to watch Will be tormented instead of tormenting us.
Yes, it is enjoyable, and I think the only other thing that I would put out there, because I just started doing it, is I started a blog series called From LP to RP, where I take album covers and I create 5th edition content based off of like whatever inspires me about them, and it's really fun. And so if no one else likes it, I really do, and I think that's all that really matters.
Yeah, I checked out that first blog entry, and it's pretty sweet. I'm really excited for the rest of them.
Awesome.
It's such a neat project idea. Like that's.
Yeah, no, I saw it come across my feed, and I'm like, what is this? And I'm like, this is cool.
Awesome.
Right?
I started thinking back all of my album covers, right?
I know I tried starting to like scroll through my brain too to think of ones that would be interesting too,
Well,
but
you
I ain't come up
you
with
let me
anything
know,
so far.
and I can always
I'll
use
let you know
more
if I-
inspiration.
Yes.
That's all I have.
All right, and Tallsquall, can you tell us a little bit more about what else you have going on?
Sure. Yeah, no, other than being, like I said, tormented with the fun and excitement of Turncloaks, which is our sort of low magic campaign where I'm playing a plague doctor, which is sort of how we've described a cleric. He's of the grave domain in this really low magic world. We've made great pains, or at least I've tried to do my best to make science match these spells, so they're not necessarily straight off of the descriptions that you might find in the player's handbook, and that's certainly been a fun challenge, creative thing to do. But I really enjoy that. It is dark though, so if that's not your cup of tea, we have the Vice that you had mentioned that I DM. We run it 100% for charity. We've been going for a little bit over a year now, and we've raised, we're approaching $8,000 that we've raised for about 10 different charities. We actually have a table of charities that has been submitted by our players and our regular viewers, and we roll each month of what charity we're going to support, and have been able to, as I say, almost $8,000 now that we've raised. So I'm really pleased with that. It's been amazing to learn more about charities that I wasn't aware of, and then be able to give them some support from the amazing role-playing community out there. Just far more generous and far more giving than I think any of us could have ever expected. And it's just been really neat thing to see and be a part of. The other fun thing we have going on right now, if you want something really on the lighter side, right now, Learn by Play, which is on the D&D Twitch channel on Saturday nights at 6. Will is DMing. It's called Reinventing the Realms. It's taking the realm of Faerun and throwing in some homebrew into it. We're starting at level 1, and we were making our characters interesting. So we were going through our characters, and everyone sort of was like, oh, we want to try out some of these great new classes that are out and some of the new materials. And we all did. And then we also were all being quirky and whatever, and rolling stats and putting together our character story. And we didn't realize until about halfway through session 1, every single one of us has int as our dump stat.
Oh no.
I was like one of those things. I was like, I had rolled something and it was like, you had a -1. Someone else rolled something. I was like, I'm -2. Then someone else rolled that's a 0. I'm like, I sent out a message madly through our chat. I'm like, did everyone take intelligence as their dump stat? And everyone's like, yep. And we're like, oh, wow.
And this is the importance of session 0, everyone.
Yeah. So we are, on the D&D channel with a group that is, going to be all about hitting the charisma and just hitting things hard.
You are the hammer.
That sounds amazing.
But it's been very fun. It's very interesting. A whole different type of gameplay. One of the things Will had said is that it's about these wild cards after the events of Tomb of Annihilation, and so we are now known as the wild cards because we're all the you always have the one quirky member of the party. We're all the quirky members.
It's like if that was all that was left over and you just made a group of
left. Yeah. So it's been a lot of fun. But so those are sort of the things that I'm involved with. You can find me on Encounter Roleplay doing Encounter Roleplay things, one-shots and other campaigns that I'm involved with. But it's all about getting together and telling a story. And the biggest piece of that's character creation. So I'm looking forward to taking people through a little bit of how we do it here.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here as well, Tallsquall. Well, how about we jump into find out what this game is actually all about before we get to the character creation.
What's in a game?
So we are going to open the floor to answering a few questions. So feel free, you guys, to jump in and discuss wherever you feel comfortable. So, Dungeons and Dragons, we know it's popular. What is the standard Dungeons and Dragons setting for some that might not be familiar with it, that may be listening right now?
Well, I mentioned it before. I mean, it's Forgotten Realms, Faerun. I actually am not a big modern lore buff. I know those two pieces, and I go to, I go out onto Google when I need to know things. So there's the end of my knowledge on that one. So I'll step back and let someone else talk.
Well, like what sort of setting? It's a fantasy setting, right? With dungeons, dragons, castles, monsters, magic, etc. Anything that kind of stands out to you guys that might make it a little bit more apart from just a regular standard fantasy game?
In terms of the Forgotten Realms, I know one of the big things, so I probably have too much knowledge and won't go that road either, but even despite all of that and all the years it has been around, it does a decent job of having empty spaces in which you can exist. And there's a lot of very clearly defined things, and depending on the players at your table, that can be good or bad. When I'm in Waterdeep, they're like, okay, 3 blocks down is this bar and this shop. Probably not great, but you can also go off into these uncharted wilds that can be anything that you want them to be. Some other places are so defined that you don't feel like you have that freedom.
I think that's kind of how I think of D&D generally, is that it's more of an open sandbox kind of world where you can fit in the pieces that you want. It has this generic fantasy feel, but there's, all these other pieces that you can kind of create yourself and your players can add in. Some settings have like a very strong meta plot or very like specific, like you said, like 3 blocks down is this, and then there's this. And, I think of D&D as being much more open.
Well, I think it's that flexibility. And with, I think we're at 40 some odd years of lore, there is a lot of breadth that you can use. And that's nice for both dungeon master and player, that you have this built-in familiarity with this land, but for a level 1 adventurer, you step too far off the road and it can be any forest, anywhere, any creature, in any fantasy realm that you want it to be. So I think that's kind of one of the things that I know a lot of people who have played even some of the video games that are based off of the lore. It's interesting to see people you may have met and not even realized it was something that was Dungeons and Dragons. I was actually just talking to someone today that I'm starting a Curse of Strahd campaign, which I've kept myself completely sequestered from, waiting for the group to play it, because everyone talks about how amazing it is. And so I didn't want to know anything, no spoilers. I didn't want to run it. I've never opened the book. I know the very, very basics from the fact that I know Ravenloft, the video game. And so, and I was mentioning to someone today, and he was like, I didn't realize that was, that was all part of that. I'm like, oh yeah, no, it's all interconnected. And a lot of people don't even realize how interconnected, that Baldur's Gate is. They know that series and like, what do you mean that's D&D? It's like, no, that's D&D. Mm-hmm. So I think that there's a bit of that nostalgia, and I say, the built-in feels that you can sometimes play on with people in these worlds, which is nice.
Yeah, I think it by now, because it's been around so long and there are so many, different pieces of it, it offers a nice balance between having a lot of stuff to work off of if you're the kind of person that doesn't want to completely write your own story, and you need a little structure. It has that, and then if you're the kind of person that wants to completely make up your own thing, there's certainly room for that too.
Right, in this world or creating your whole world. I mean, that's the nice part about the reference levels that you have with 5th edition and even previous editions, I think, is the fact that you've got that ability to I think in the DM guides, it's, it has you start with a pantheon of gods, to truly start at, in the beginning,
right?
type
Yes.
level
This is your
of
genesis.
creation. Or just down to, we're going to get together for this party, or we're going out, hiking, and we're going to, have a weekend and we're going to play D&Ds at night because there's no TV in the cabin type idea. And you can go like, okay, here's a couple monsters, everyone, quick make a character and let's roll some dice. And I think it lends itself to either type of play.
Mm-hmm. So I think the next step then in creating our characters is to say, what things do we need? What material things do we need to get this done? What do you need to have in front of you?
A piece of paper,
Yep.
piece of paper, pencil, truly for just character creation, and a 6-sided die. From any Monopoly game anywhere or whatever you have in your house. Certainly it helps if you've got more. So if you've got a Yahtzee set, go get a couple. But, if you really get right down to it, and then of course, Player's Handbook, or as I was mentioning earlier, I have discovered the fun and excitement that is D&D Beyond on the web, which is a great tool because literally you can log into it. If you've got internet, you can get to it and you can create a character.
Yeah, it does all its calculations for you and everything, from what I understand.
Yeah.
Yep.
For those of us who are math-averse.
Oh, yeah. You can do, I would almost say not that this is by any means my approach, as I've been playing for far too long and spent way too much money on physical items to go this road. But if you wanted to, if you have a smartphone, you are ready. You are ready to play. You are ready to roll dice. You are ready to do everything from the comfort of your own two thumbs. Honestly, at this point, with like all the D&D Beyond stuff and the dice roller apps, although I've had terrible luck with those, I feel like it's out to get me, but that's my own paranoia. But I think that's all you would really need. But definitely, the feel of actual dice cannot be beat, though.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of actual real physical dice, and a little bit superstitious about mine, that I have a set that they're beautiful and I love them, but they roll terribly and they can't touch the other dice now. Like they've been put in the corner on timeout. They're not allowed.
Dice jail.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. And when you're actually playing the game, you're going to need a little bit more than just your D6s. You'll probably need some percentile dice, so you can roll between 1 and 100. You'll need, an 8-sided die, a 12-sided die, and so on. Pretty much everything from a 4-sided die to a 20-sided die, really, will get you by when you're actually playing the game.
But again, you can, do the internet too.
Yep. There's a lot of apps for that.
Yep.
So when we get down to it, when we create our characters, what do our characters do in a D&D game? How do you play with these characters?
That is not a small question.
Not a small question.
Yeah, I was going to say, how much time do you want us to take on this one?
Oh, we've got time.
Yeah.
I think quickly defining the role of the person running the game and then referencing back on top of that, so someone is running, if you will, the world, and it is the players that then interact with that. And whatever that may mean, you have some tools at your disposal to do that. It could be that none in your party have very much intelligence and they smash things, or it could be that none of your party has any strength and instead they try and outthink things. So it's really just interacting with the world in the way that the players want to.
Yeah, to get into, I've actually had to explain this a couple times to friends who, as I've returned to D&D, my D&D roots, I took almost, 2 decades off between when I played in college and now suddenly playing again. This entire weekend, I think I've got close to 26 hours of D&D playing.
Amazing.
Oh, wow.
Sounds like a good weekend.
Jealous.
Yeah, no kidding.
Not a bad plan.
Exactly. It's a great weekend. So, I had a friend who has absolutely no idea, doesn't play any type of games that involve character creation or any type of stats or anything. It's like, so explain to me stats, explain to me what attributes are, type thing. And, so being an engineer, I went into engineer mode. I was like, it's a way to capture the infinite variety of human beings into a set of numbers. And she at first balked at that. And she goes, that's a horrible thing. How can you possibly put people into numbers? And I'm like, no. The idea is, and I gave her some examples, a bodybuilder, or actually, if you really go into the true strength of it, more like a power lifter, they have developed their strength for whatever reason, and it's showing that they are very strong. So, and an 18 is your natural limit to that before very specific training or whatever. If we get into the real nitty gritty of the rules, dexterity, a gymnast, someone who's very agile, someone, or a dancer. And that, her being a dancer, I got her with that one. I was like, you're dancers, and I was explaining to her, not every dancer can do what they do at the New York Ballet. Also every ballet dancer doesn't necessarily know how to do tap. So, you've got that whole type of piece, or she always talked about the hardest thing she ever did was the dance, doing Sugar Plum Fairy, for the Nutcracker, that's like one of the most difficult, most strenuous bits. Like, now here's where you get into, that's where you would have a high dex, high constitution. This is someone who's got the endurance to build through it. So I just kept on giving out lots of examples like that of how you can quantify. Now, we get into much more soft territory with intelligence and wisdom, trying to make that differentiation. And then charisma is the one that everyone likes to argue about, right? That's always been an interesting one. I always think of charisma as your ability to influence, not necessarily your attractiveness, which I think, attractiveness in most societies will sometimes lend to influence, but does not necessarily mean that you are going to be able to influence better than some others.
Yeah, I think in real life examples, charisma would be your politicians, your people that can kind of talk their way out of things and maybe aren't the most good looking, but they know how to how to give a speech.
That was going to be my exact argument, was if it truly were how visually stunning you were, we would have a lot more attractive presidents. That's all I was thinking.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, my example for that always is Stephen Hawking.
Mm. Oh, yes.
Stephen Hawking truly can influence the world with his opinions. But, there's your almost, example of maybe a 2 dex, great int, actually probably great wisdom for being able to, at this point in his life and living with the hardships he's have. But, most people would just by looks would go, well, no, that's low charisma. It's like, no, he's actually probably like an 18 charisma, because here's someone with all of these other disadvantages, but still the world stops and listens to him.
Mm-hmm.
So I always like to use that as my example of charisma not necessarily being what you think it is.
Yeah, definitely. That really sums things up very well for all the different stats. I like that.
You guys did a way better job than we did when we were trying to sort out exactly how to explain all of them.
Well,
that's why we invite the professionals.
I was going to say, I have way too much time on a podcast and playing D&D, so it's okay. Yeah. It's purely attrition, not skill.
Truly. I think also once you've been a dungeon master, a game master, and had to make those calls, especially those wisdom versus intellect calls, of what check you really want to get, gets interesting. And sometimes, we won't get into this in character creation, but in running the game, you can sometimes swap out even what is the recommended attribute for a check. Religion's my one where I always usually find myself doing a swap, specifically for paladins and druids, who are wisdom and charisma religious-based casters, but religion is about your book learning of your religion. But when you're talking about your affinity with your god, it should be based on those stats that those spells are being cast from, wisdom or charisma.
That makes a lot of sense.
Sorry, I'm getting way out of character creation.
No, that's fine.
Don't mind me as I ramble on about,
That was, I'm not going to lie though, that was a fantastic idea and I'm stealing it. So now you know.
It's like, got a notebook over there writing it down.
Coming soon to a DMnastics near you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so one more question we want to talk about before we get into like the history, the parts of it that we haven't necessarily covered yet, is what do you think makes D&D unique as a game? Like, why would you play D&D over any other of the millions of hundreds, I don't know, role-playing games out there?
I think one of the biggest things that makes it unique now is its prevalence and the support that brings. My first thought was, it's versatility, but I don't think that that's what truly makes it unique, in that you can really find an RPG that fits exactly what you're looking for that isn't D&D. But the fact that probably over 100,000 people tuned in to watch the first episode of season 2 of Critical Role. And yeah, there we go.
Nice.
We got critters in our midst. And the fact that they're on billboards.
I feel like we're all wearing like...
No, mine's just a super cool looking owl. I failed.
Nice.
I've got one on that's a little bit appropriate for one of our guests. So.
Hey, I know that shirt.
Nice.
This is really great for our audio medium. Everybody can see that we're all wearing...
Yes, I'm wearing a blue Critical Role shirt. But, this is, talk about charity. I mean, this is the one from NDA that they
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
But I think, it's that. I mean, if you look at then all the celebrity games that are the celebrities that are involved in games, Joe Manganiello has embraced his origins in D&D, and we are all better people for it. And just the number of people that are like coming out and coming forward in support of that, allowing it to be, in a lot of ways, the RPG gateway drug. And it's just going to be the tide that raises all ships, I think, is the thing that really makes D&D stand out right now.
Yeah, I think there's that, like you're saying, there's this instant sense of community and connection that you can get when saying, I've got a D&D game this weekend. And a lot of times, unfortunately, for people who don't play, it's become almost like I'm drinking a Coke, even if you're drinking a Pepsi, or Kleenex, instead of tissue, because it is just the generic RPG term these days. But I think that level that immediately goes into when someone invites you and say it's your first, you've never played before, and someone invites you over. Again, you pop it into Google and you can see, Vin Diesel playing D&D. You can play, you can see, anyone's Twitter that you're blowing up talking about that they're doing their game. Certainly this thing called Critical Role will show up, and you turn that on and you'll hear, you're an Overwatch player, and suddenly you're hearing the voices of the people who play Overwatch, or you play WoW, and suddenly Illidan Stormrage is rolling dice. It's kind of a cool thing. I mean, there's this instant connection that you get, and that helps you. I think especially today in our world, there is so much need for people to find a community and a group to sort of identify with, to step away a little bit. And while you can get some of that in like a World of Warcraft or an Overwatch, or I need to think of something other than Blizzard Project, but Call of Duty, any of those types of games, there is, I think, this built in with Dungeons and Dragons. There's so many places you can go on and be like, I just want to play a game. I want to play with other people. I want to have this face-to-face connection with folks. And while there's great other systems out there, I think there's systems that I just love, that I've played and really enjoyed playing. But when it comes to new players, meeting new people, going to conventions, there's a quick, immediate vocabulary of what you're to expect from a Dungeons and Dragons game. Whereas with Numenera might not be the case, or off the top of my head, I'm trying to think of other systems that I've played, but yeah,
it's really the gateway drug of RPGs. It's, that's how I always describe it. That's part of why we picked this for our first episode. It's sort of ubiquitous. And, I do have that problem of like being at work and saying, I'm going to go play whatever this weekend. And people say, I don't know what that is. I'm like, it's like D&D. It's, you just have to you're like, it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's like D&D. Oh, okay. Yeah. Then suddenly we know what you're talking about.
And now we've got all sorts of pop culture references to D&D and things like Stranger Things and whatnot. where it's becoming super popular just to have it in kind of a more front and center portion of our culture, instead of, it's those nerds in the basement playing D&D and rolling their dice and summoning things or whatever.
I totally bought this D&D shirt at Target. Right out there in the front of the women's section.
You don't have to go to a specialty store to get geeky D&D t-shirts anymore. It's there.
We've done it. No.
The nerds win. You can't shove us back in the basement now.
Definitely not. But it's funny because, D&D has been around for over 40 years, like we said. And it was actually originally released in 1974. So that's a bit older than myself. And I'm usually pretty old in my current circles. And it's gone through 5 editions so far. And each one's been a bit different from each other edition. I think 1 and 2 might have been somewhat similar, but I'm not familiar with first edition at all. I kind of grew up starting with the rules of second edition and went from there to third edition, 3.5. Skipped over fourth edition because this was after college when my life went completely to working and not playing, unfortunately. But fifth edition is the current edition of Dungeons and Dragons, and that's the one that we're planning to use today.
Yes.
And we are using it because it's current. We are not making any assessments right now about which edition is better. Please don't email us or tweet us or whatever.
Edition wars. Let's do this.
It's all your opinions. I will come right out and say that this is actually the only edition I've ever played. I only started playing D&D like a year ago, and I played for about 4 months. So I am the least experienced of us here. So
we won't judge you.
That's okay.
That's okay. This will be. It's fine. It's fine.
I know there's a few more terms that we probably need to cover for our audience that may not be familiar with things before we actually dive into character creation. I know, Tallsquall, you covered the ability score descriptions perfectly, so thank you for that. And speaking of which, the ability scores, mechanically, they are the things that determine how good you are at certain tasks, using certain skills, casting spells for certain classes, things like that. And basically, the higher the score that you have, the higher your modifier is. And the modifier is what you add on to your roll in order to determine what your result is for that check. And basically the skill proficiencies, everybody basically has access to all of the skills in Dungeons and Dragons, but the proficiencies tell you that you're a little bit better at it, you're trained in it, and you get what is called a proficiency bonus that you add on top of your ability modifier. That way you get a little bit more of a boost, and that bonus actually increases with your levels as well. Anything else that we might have missed in terms of the basic terms that we would need to cover for character creation?
I don't think so. I think the only thing that we, as a collective unit, and I say this mostly to myself, is to watch out for using abbreviations, because I'm ready to say con and dex all day long. Just in case people don't know what those are.
Right. No,
we can just,
point.
in editing, insert into the recording one of us saying, every time you say Constitution.
Constitution. What?
Yeah, exactly.
I like it.
Nice robotic voice.
There you go.
Yes.
What did you get for Constitution?
Oh. All right. Well, are you guys ready to dive in?
Sure.
Should we make some people?
Yes.
Let's make some people.
Let's make some people.
Awesome.
Let's make some people.
All right. So, does anybody, to start, do you guys have any things that you specifically want to make? Do you have preferences here?
I mean, I haven't gone deep into it and certainly can change out. I was thinking again, since we're gearing this towards beginners or folks who've not created before, I was going to go with what I actually think is kind of one of the great unsung classes, which is to build your basic fighter. It is kind of always done as fighters are boring. They never have a story. They're just the fighter, and I think that people overlook some of the really unique things that you can do when telling a story and playing as a fighter. I tend to approach a little bit D&D maybe differently, I'm not sure, than everyone else. My campaigns and the games that I play in are very heavily narrative based. We might have a combat once every 3, 4, 5, half dozen sessions, and the rest of it will be either political encounters or interaction between the world and the players. So from people normally, like I said, with a fighter, like, that's just your flat out combat class. They don't have much of a story to tell through the mechanics, but I'm here to hopefully prove people otherwise with some of the things that I like to do. Like I say, one of the great unsung classes. So I was going to make a fighter.
All right. Neal, do you have a preference here?
I do. And I feel like Tallsquall and I are going to approach this in a similar manner with their very different ideas. And I will make what I believe is my favorite race class combo with a dwarf cleric. And a lot of people also say like, oh no, essentially like, oh, you showed up late, you have to play the cleric.
Oh, no.
You showed up late and the only power left over is heart. I'm sorry. Everyone else has super cool abilities. But
we need a healer.
Yeah, but I think more so even in 5th edition than other editions, the cleric can be a ton more than just like a heal bot or just any of the preconceived notions. Like I just played the starter set with my wife and one of her friends recently, and I was unstoppable with Sacred Flame as a first level cleric. So I'm going with dwarf cleric. Very nice.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I am a cleric and paladin are my go-tos. I love being the healer.
All right. And what about you, Ryan? You have a plan here?
I kind of was wanting to do kind of either a tanky thing or a damage dealing thing. I'm not too particular about exactly which one to go with, and I think I'm going to play it by ear, but I think I'm leaning a little bit more towards the damage dealer type.
All right. In true Amelia fashion, I'm going to go with the charisma style play, and I am going to pick a bard.
Nice. You will sing our tales or not. Another preconceived notion is that all bards are singing and doing stuff like that. Again, True. Does not have to be that. Could be terrible jokes, which is my favorite approach.
Stand-up comedian.
Yeah. Now, you just have to be a naturally comedic person to play a character like that, because you don't want to have your party not be laughing at your really lame jokes.
This bard only tells dad jokes.
Yes.
Hey, I would laugh. So, to create a character, we have to determine the ability scores that we talked about earlier. And there's 3 main methods to cover for rolling up our ability scores, so to speak, in Dungeons and Dragons. There's the tried and true method of simply rolling for them. And in 5th edition, rules as written is you take 4 6-sided dice, roll them, remove the lowest value die, and then add up the remaining 3. Do that 6 times, and now you got 6 numbers to assign to whichever abilities you wish for your character. Another option is the standard array. This is just a standard set of 6 ability scores that do not change from the start. And it's anywhere from a score of 8 all the way up to 15. But the nice thing about this is you really only have one score that's below average, and it's really not below average that much. So you're above average pretty much overall for your character, and you don't have to worry about rolling really low compared to the rolling method.
Also means that everybody's kind of working off of the same set of stats rather than, having somebody who has really poor luck or somebody who's just really great at everything.
Yeah, it's really good for party balance if you want to go that route. Another route to go is a little bit more math intensive. It's the point buy system. Basically, you get 27 points and you're able to spend them according to a certain chart. You can have a score from 8 costing 0 points all the way up to 15 costing 9 points. With this method, you could end up with scores such as 3 15s and 3 8s, or you could go really balanced with 3 13s and 3 12s, and pretty much anywhere in between, as long as you can use all 27 of your points. And it's worth noting, you can actually recreate the standard array with the point buy system if you truly intended to. So if your DM locks you into point buy, but you really wanted the standard array, well, you're in luck. You can do that still. So what I was kind of thinking for our character creation, how about each of us take one of these methods if you have a preference, and one of us will choose whichever one we want at that point, since we got 4 people here. So Tallsquall, what method do you prefer normally?
I usually do 4d6, but I'm happy to take something else if someone else wants to roll. But if no one else wants to play the fates, I will be happy to do so. All
right. How about you, Neal?
I usually like, because I do a lot of games online when it comes to D&D, I will actually go with the point buy and kind of take that one on.
Wonderful. And Amelia?
I'm going to go with the one that involves the least amount of math and pick the standard array.
Fantastic. So that means I get to choose whatever I want, and I'm with Tallsquall. I'm going with rolling.
Nice. I don't get me wrong though, I love me some rolling, because at my home game, I actually came up with a personalized system where you take 4d6 for each attribute, but you can move them around. So you essentially have like a pseudo dice pool. So you could choose to only roll 3 dice on one attribute, and then maybe roll 5 on another one because you really want to get something good, and you move it around.
Ooh.
But the fates can still be unkind no matter how many dice you roll.
The odds are still sort of not in your favor.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So how about let's go ahead and for the point buy and for the rolling method, let's go ahead and get our stats so we can figure out where they're going to go when we're ready. Oh, that's a horrible start. Just got an 8.
13.
What's a 15?
I got a 10.
Oh no, another 8.
Got a 15.
11.
Ooh. That's 12. Not as bad as I thought.
Oh no.
Did you get a 3?
Is a cruel mistress.
That's a 6.
Yahtzee.
Oof.
All ones.
No, I'm bad at math. That's a 7.
Slightly better.
Slightly better. Oh no. That's an 11.
So I have accomplished by clicking some buttons. I am ready. I have stats.
Awesome.
I do as well.
Oh, my stats are horrible. But you know what? That's okay. I can deal with that.
The good news is that
just go for it, man.
We are not playing these characters right now, so
that's true.
So actually I did pretty well. I've got everything's at least above a 10, but I've got nothing above a 15 either. So it's that sort of And I actually, because I just listened to the Mike Merle's little video on dwarves, was going to play a dwarf as well. So
nice.
That we can use later maybe as potentially some group backstory when we get to that point in our broadcast.
Oh, there you go.
Awesome.
Let's see. So I am probably going to go with, I'm kind of between a monk and a barbarian. I think, you know what? I think I'm going to go with a monk on this one. And I'm going to make him human.
I was ready for you to say that you were also going to make them a dwarf, but That's not what you said. No, I'm okay with it, though.
Yeah, that's okay.
So why dwarves, guys? Why
Like
does
I
that
said,
appeal to
literally,
you?
I just listened to the sort of history of dwarves from Mike Merles, who's one of the creators of, or the one of the creators of the current edition of Wizards of the Coast. And I kind of liked this idea that he was posing there about dwarves being the craftsmen of, that their whole sort of society, religion, everything revolves around making themselves better at something, and which plays into this narrative that I'm trying to build about a fighter who, as I said, has one of the most unique mechanics for showing the growth of a character that I feel in storytelling, which is unlike every other class out there that gets feats and attribute increases at every 4 levels. Fighters, for the most part, get them every 2. So to build the story of someone who is younger, a new adventurer, level 1, or I don't know what we're actually rolling up, but wherever we start, a young adventurer, and being able to show with your storytelling this progression into a honed adventurer warrior through these increases of your base stats or by taking feats at these at levels. So I think it's a great way to tell a story with what is, like I say, considered to be one of the most basic classes, but for telling a story of someone coming of age, it can make for a very compelling narrative because you're actually seeing their proficiencies, their abilities, feats that they might take that you can build into your story as the character grows, as your campaign goes forward. So you have a real reflection in your actual mechanics of your class with your storytelling.
Oh, that's really cool.
For me, it's where I started, and it's where my love will always be. I say that like sitting here talking to you, I can look, and I mean, again, it's great for the audio medium, but this is the first mini I used like 20 plus years ago, and I still have it. And I will always love dwarves because of that. And that, I don't know. And sweet, sweet beards.
So good old nostalgia and good old facial hair.
Mm-hmm.
Nostalgia, but I can't do facial hair. So
Not with that attitude.
I'll work on it. I'll think really hard. I'll just like really believe in myself.
Okay.
All right. And I think I'm going to go with half elf. Because I feel like I'm not a good decision maker, and being half something means I had one less decision to make.
Yeah.
I like it.
I know what I'm about.
And you went with the true like combo class. I mean, less so, I think, in 5th, but in the bard. I mean, back in the day, that was definitely like a little bit of fighter, a little bit of thief, a little bit of wizard. You have a bard.
Pretty much, yeah. I think can they do cure spells in this game too? I'm not too familiar with the bard class in 5e.
I don't know. We're about to
Don't
find
ask
out.
Questions.
There you go.
I know. I
don't.
apologize for asking questions.
Jeez, come on.
And I actually chose human. It's interesting because in all my time playing Dungeons and Dragons, I don't think I've ever played a human. I've always played something else because, I'm human all the time in real life. So why should I play as a human in Dungeons and Dragons? But 5th edition is really nice with the human. Either A, I get +1 to every one of my ability scores, or B, I can take +1 to 2 of them, and then I get an extra skill proficiency and a feat starting at level 1, which is pretty darn remarkable.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, you want to squeak out those mechanics out of your class race combo.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to go about it, and I find myself min-maxing a little bit more than I desire because I really like diving into the actual character itself, but, a little min-maxing never hurt anyone.
Yeah, I think there's that balance of wanting to be able to play your character, but also, the dice are the dice. And part of the fun, I mean, I always go to Travis from Critical Role, who, had this really low score, and he put it in int, and became one of the most sort of endearing features of his character Grog was his low intelligence for some of the really great role-playing moments in the game. And so don't let a low score or a group that all have the same low score about the experience put you off. I mean, I think we're all sort of embracing it now that, okay, we are going to be, this sort of real, different sort of party. You normally have the wizard or a caster who's going to be your big tactical brain and be able to nail those investigation and history and all those other checks as we get into skill checks here. And, make it part of your story.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. No one uses a deck of many things like that unless they do not have a high intelligence score.
Exactly.
So each of us have now picked our race, and I think for the most part picked our class. And but starting with the race, every race offers some mechanical benefits too. So if we want to go through and just make sure that we've added all of those.
Mm-hmm. I will plug D&D Beyond here, which is nice. A lot of this will autofill for you once you pick, which is nice when you're going through. And this is where I don't know all the ins and outs of the levels, but I do believe that character creation for the basic classes is available without purchase. Don't quote me on that. I believe that at least in some form you are able to create characters without necessarily buying a lot of the extra add-ons that go on with it.
I will quote you on that, Tallsquall, because that is exactly what I'm doing right now.
Oh, awesome. Great. So there you go.
You heard it here, folks.
Yep. I have not
so it's a great tool for even if you don't want to go into the deep and, I got lucky because unlike a lot of people, I hadn't bought all the 5th edition books.
Oh, nice.
I had only bought a player's manual and basically a DM's guide and a monster manual. I hadn't bought a lot of adventures, wanted to have them in my repertoire. And when they came out, they had sort of a big, huge, just get it all. And I'm like, sign me up because it's Christmas. and it's been great. I will say this I know I'm plugging D&D Beyond, but here's a really neat feature that they have. If you can create a campaign, if one of your members does subscribe to it, they can create a campaign, and everyone that they invite to that campaign has access to everyone else's in that campaign's purchases.
Oh,
so
nice.
It's just like your gaming group where you might have that between a whole gaming group, you might have the whole library. And if you brought them all to Saturday Night D&D, you would have access. That is the same way that D&D Beyond works, is that any book that has been purchased by anyone in a campaign, once you have someone, who does that, has access to the whole campaign library.
Oh, that's really smart.
So choose your friends wisely. Ask them to provide a list of the things that they have purchased before you become friends with them. So you can kind of, weed out those doubles.
Like it.
There's a horrible way to choose a player group. Just want to say.
Nope. Yeah, it's a really horrible way to choose a player group. But hey, there are worse ways.
That's very true.
It's true. That's true. All right.
So we got our races, we got our classes. And one thing, if somebody's completely not familiar with the whole race class thing that's prevalent in a lot of different role-playing games, basically a race determines what you look like, what your cultural history is, and a class determines effectively what you can do, what you're good at, things like that.
Your job.
Yeah, basically your job. All right. So I think I have everything for that. Oh, for humans, I'm going to go with the variant route, I believe, and do the 2 ability scores +1 and a feat. And I think I'm going to take the observant feat, which is really sweet at level 1. Let me pull that up quick here so those that are not in the know can understand what I'm talking about here. Okay, so basically with observant, I get +1 to either intelligence or wisdom. And since I'm a monk, I'm pretty decent with the wisdom on there. So I'm going to add +1 to that and bump myself up to 12, which gives me a +1 modifier, which is nice. But also it adds +5 to your passive perception and passive investigation checks. So when you're just sitting around and your DM tries to throw something sneaky at you, you can use passive perception in order to see if you can see that thing without having to make a roll. So it's kind of nice that you get +5 off the bat. And on top of that, I can read lips. I don't even have to hear them. I just have to see their lips moving. And if I understand the language, I can know what they're talking.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's a pretty sweet first level feat, I think.
We hope you enjoyed our very first episode. We do want to say a huge thank you to Neal and Tallsquall for being our very first guests. We owe them a lot for helping us make this show a reality. In particular, Tallsquall, who very last minute filled in for someone else that we were supposed to have as a guest on this very first episode. I think like the night before or something.
Yeah, it was for sure within 24 hours.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not going to say that this show wouldn't exist. You know, like we probably would have figured something out or recorded later or something. But we do owe a lot to Neal and especially Tallsquall for making sure that this episode, that this series really came out at all.
Absolutely. But, you know, if you like what you hear, we really hope that you do stick around. You can pretty much jump to any series that interests you, or you can listen to them all. I'm not going to stop you. But you can also find us online. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at CreationCast, on Facebook at Character Creation Cast, on our website at charactercreationcast.com. Feel free to drop us an email at charactercreationcast@gmail.com, or you could sign up for our Patreon at patreon.com/charactercreationcast, where we have a lot of nice bonus goodies for everybody from $1 tier and up. So feel free to swing on by there and see what that's all about.
Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you'll come back for part 2. Thank you for joining us for part 1 of this character creation series. We'll be back in part 2, picking up right where we left off.
Character Creation Cast is a production of the One Shot Podcast Network and can be found online at www.charactercreationcast.com. Head to the website to get more information on our hosts, this show, and even our press kit. Character Creation Cast can also be found on Twitter at CreationCast, or on our Discord server at discord.charactercreationcast.com. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Bolter, and I can be found on Twitter at Lord Neptune or online at lordneptune.com. Our other host, Amelia Antrim, can be found on Twitter at Ginger Reckoning. Music for this episode is used with a Creative Commons license or with permissions from the podcast they originated from. Further information can be found within the show notes. Our main theme music is Hero, remixed by Steve Combs, and is used with a Creative Commons license. This podcast is owned by us under Creative Commons. This episode was edited by Ryan Bolter. Further information for the game systems used in today's guest can also be found in the show notes. If you'd like to support our show, find us on Patreon. Get access to bonus episodes, extra outtakes, and much more at patreon.com/Character Creation Cast. Thanks for joining us, and remember, we find the best part of any role-playing game is character creation. So go out there and create some amazing people. We'll see you next time.